NRL Fantasy, buy, hold, sell, and we are blessed in more than one way tonight. First things first, welcome back, Biz. You've been away for your wedding, but you're back here talking about the important stuff. NRL Fantasy, how you been, man?
Man, honestly, had the 2 weeks of my life. Got back a couple of days ago to New York, and look, still riding the highs. But team has been holding on. They haven't been falling off a cliff yet, but they haven't been making ground either. So still ranked about the 4K mark. But I feel like I'm pretty well positioned for the weeks ahead. Team's looking good, except my boy Dave Fafita. Don't know what's going on there, but we'll talk about him in the cells.
Man, he had that one special game though. But yeah, look, Dave Fitter isn't needed for Queensland now because they've got Brendan Piakura, who stepped into the starting side this week, scored 50 points. He's back to the bench now, but it's that little flash that shows you what Piakura can do, and that's why he's the mascot of the show, right?
Yeah, he can easily become. I mean, if he gets the opportunity, he'll be the Talal. No, like he'll be 500, 600K. Don't worry about it.
Piakura season. All right, let's tear into this. So we got the buys, we got the cash cows, pods, holds and sells this week. First up with the buys section, it's pretty Newcastle heavy with Dylan Lucas, Kai Pierce-Paul, Fletcher Sharp. Then we jump into the middle forward spot, Joey Tarpanay, and then Ruben Garrick rounds it out as a center and wing fullback duel. Going to talk about Aaron Clark as well in this section, and Jacob Kraz too. First up, Dylan Lucas. You're a big Dylan Lucas guy, Biz, so I'm going to throw this one to you. Up against the Titans this week, what are you predicting score-wise, and do you think he's a must-have at this point with Jacob Preston now out for 4 weeks?
Yeah, must have. I think. Look, dual position. Look, I got him straight back in his first week back from injury. He was an easy trade in for me at 660, 670K. I wanted Herbie, but Herbie was just 100K more expensive for a similar scoring profile. Lucas has proven that he's a high 50s, even 60-point scorer when he's healthy. Only caveat for him is he's playing well. Like, could he be a shoey for Origin, like a bit of a smoky? Like, I don't know. I don't think so, but if he has a big couple of games, who knows? Because he's been playing really well. And it's not just this year. He was amazing last year too. But ignoring that for now, I think he's a must-have. You're going to want him at your centers at one stage. Like, he's going to be a top 2 center to end the year, barring any setbacks, injuries or whatnot. You're going to want Herbie and you're going to want Dylan Lucas. And if you've already got Dylan Lucas, you can probably put Herbie at the top of this list because centers are an easier position to fill for the buy rounds, but both of them are playing the early buy rounds and both of them are season-long keepers. But Dylan Lucas, dual position, 715K, still underpriced. That's an easy one. He should be at the top of your list. And if you've got centers, you can just plug him in at second row for the buys. So it's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, that's my plan here. Second row for that major buy round 12, because obviously we don't have Jacob Preston anymore. So spot freed up for me now. Otherwise, I was going to have to sell someone who's playing round 12. So that's ideal. Dylan Lucas, too. I'll shout out that Titans matchup. We've seen that matchup leak massively. So we saw Karaz score 100 plus against Titans last week. Preston had a sin bin, still scored 70 in that game without major attacking stats. The week before, Jeremiah Nanai grabbed a double. Like, we're just seeing the Titans sort of choosing not to defend. And look, if it sounds like I'm a Titans hater, it's because I actually believe in the Titans. And I think they have the core of a strong side, like good middle forward rotation, good edge back rows, a fun spine. They've been injured mostly, but I'm just really disappointed in what the Titans put out. So, yeah, I think the Titans are a pretty easy matchup for Lucas this week. I think he pumps out a massive score, and he's my number one priority for buying this week. Kai Pierce-Paul is in a similar boat without the same attacking upside or the center coverage. But if you're in a position where you've got Lucas already, you're planning to play Lucas in the center spot in round 12, and you have space in your edge back row spot there, I actually don't hate the idea of going Lucas and Kai Pierce-Paul. And what we've seen from Pierce-Paul so far is incredible base stats. So really solid defensive stats, about 40 tackles a game, running the ball a ton, not a ton of attacking stats, but I think those will come through as the year goes on as well. So Kai Pierce-Paul, he's expensive, but that Origin schedule is fantastic. No buy till round 12. I think he could open up this Titans side too, much like Fletcher Sharp, who's next as well. But can you get your thoughts here, Biz, on Kai Pierce-Paul, or are you just going to jump straight to Fletcher Sharp here?
Mate, it's hard because you could have pretty much half the Knights team. They're doing poorly, but in the real life, but fantasy-wise, they're studs. And like you said, no buy till round 18. So you could have Lucas, you could have Kai Pierce-Paul, you could have Sharp, you could have Leo Thompson, you could have Marzu. If Ponga doesn't make Origin, you want Ponga. I could honestly see myself having 10 nights if everything goes well in the next few
Brad
weeks.
and Best, get him in.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. But look, I don't have much more to say on Kai Pierce-Paul. The only knock was, is he going to get 80 minutes in the second row this year? It sounded like they were shopping him around, but even with injuries and things like that, he seems to be 80-minute guy for them on that edge. The attacking stats will come, like you said. But I'll move to Fletcher Sharp. I've had Fletcher Sharp for a few weeks now, and I think, look, he's proven. The thing I liked about him when I bought him 3 weeks ago was that he seemed matchup proof. He was scoring 50 points or like high 40s, even 38, 39 when they were getting shut out to 0. So when an attacking player is scoring 40 points in shutouts, you got faith that the big scores will be there when they come to play, and that's exactly what's happened. Hat trick last week for 75 odd points. Honestly, could be like Fletcher Sharp has a 80, 90, 100 in him when things go well, because his base stats are actually pretty good. Like, he makes 30 tackles a game. So 30 tackles a game puts him in that Dylan Brown category of half that just loves to tackle, but he's got a lot more attacking upside because he runs the ball a lot more. He's got more of an offload on him. I think, look, the thing with Fletcher Sharp is he plays on that brilliant left edge. So if you think Lucas is going to have a field day versus that Titans team, and just like Longy, I also have a soft spot for the Titans. So, it's not like I'm hating on the Titans here, but if it's Dylan Lucas running amok, it's Bradman Best running amok, it's Fletcher Sharp running amok, and it's probably Ponga running amok too. So, look, that whole edge could feast. I think Fletcher Sharp, with how weak the wing fullback position is this year, that dual position as well, I think you want to end the year with a combination of Latrell, Jaden Campbell, Fletcher Sharp, and a couple others who are flashing out like Teddy and things like that. So, look, I think, again, playing 12 and 15, it's a no-brainer because fullback is a hard position to fill because a lot of the good fullbacks play Origin. I think get him in your team if you need a fullback.
Yeah, scorching hot. And I'll shout out to Tommy Dearden, had 5 try assists and a monster fantasy score 2 weeks ago against the Titans. So you've got a team that tends to concede some points against that running 6 a lot of the time as well. So, yeah, Fletcher Sharp, lock him in for a big score this week. What I will say, too, is that score last week, the 76, it doesn't change how, I think I can speak for both of us, it doesn't change how we view Fletcher Sharp. Like, that base stats has been fantastic. He's had that attacking upside. Don't react to the 76. React to the scoring profile and sort of what he's been doing in losses as well, because he's always had that upside. Joey Tarpanay is up next, and 777K. He's pretty expensive, but he just keeps rocking up and putting up scores. He's more involved in attack this year. Canberra are bumping through the middle, and I feel like their running game across the board has just been so dynamic. And Joey Tarpanay has been a big part of that. There was a bit of a concern that potentially when Hosking came back, it might eat into Tarpanay's minutes, but he played 60 minutes last week, pumped out a big score. He's got a good run of fixtures here now. Is Tarpanay someone you'd consider here, Beers, at that price, or do you think he's a bit too expensive and you're looking for some more value in the middle instead?
I would definitely consider him. I think he's always traditionally done really well in the second half of the season, like just through the Origin and the later rounds. It kind of takes a while to start, and then he just hits the kind of the motor around this is around 10-ish, which is now. So I think he's a great pick. I think it's too expensive for me personally. But on the flip side, I haven't really done a trade scenario yet with my team. So if I have the cash for him, like move a feeder to him, for example, I'd consider it. I know we would talk about Aaron Clark in a second, but there's a few options in the mids. There's a couple of sleeper buyers in the mids too. But if you want a season-long keeper in that forward spot, I wouldn't mind it. But the thing is, everyone's going to have Haas, everyone's going to have May, everyone's going to have Yo. Probably people have guys like Corey Horsburgh who might play this week. Like, you're stacking the middles quite heavily. That's my only caveat against him. Like, maybe I want to spread that money a bit wider, but I'll have to evaluate what the value options are. And if there's no value options in the mids, then I'm not going to force it. Like, I'll go get Joseph Tarpanay if I can afford it.
Yeah, because there are a few we're going to talk about here. So Jacob Safidi is on our list for today. We've got Jazz Tavanga, who's named at lock this week, with Jake Popovich going to prop. So there's a few guys we're going to talk about today that are very interesting in the middle forward spot. Tarpanay is on my list, but as I see those options pop up, I start to think maybe he might slide down my list. So, yeah, interesting option, but you're paying full price, which I don't love to do. Just to compare there, by the way, Max King, he's had a couple of quieter games. He's not on this list, but he's an interesting one who has had those games where he's pumped out those big high 50s numbers. We saw him last week play 43 minutes in a game where they were missing Curran, Tupanua, and Matt Burton. And they had an injury to their half at the start of the game. So Haywood ended up playing in the halves the whole game too. 43 minutes with those circumstances, pretty concerning from my perspective for Max King. And this is sort of what I was talking about with Max King a couple of weeks ago. So I bought Max King last year in a similar situation. And he sort of regressed back to being a bit of a plotter, pumping out that 37, that 45, that 52. that sort of mid 40s average. And I'm seeing a bit of that happening now. So as much as on paper he looks good, he tends to not be reliable across the year. And I tend to like these guys like Tarpanay with a bit more pedigree, a bit more. So yeah, I'd go Tarpanay over Max King if I was tossing those two up. Ruben Garrick's the last one here, 646K. And I'm going to do a bit of a comparison here with Jacob Carraz. Now, I was pumping up Carraz last week. There's an Instagram video, all that sort of thing, where, up against the Titans, he's going to get a massive score. But I think that origin potential has become a worse possibility this week, as in it's a higher chance it's going to happen. So it's worse for your fantasy side. A couple of reasons for that. One, he dominated on that edge right next to Stephen Crichton, who is definitely going to get picked, right? So that combination would be red hot. Two, Zach Lomax is not on the extended bench for Parramatta. He's not on the starting side. He's due back next week, but not even on the extended bench. That could be delayed a bit longer potentially. There's no guarantee that happens next week. And that even if he does come back next week, it's one game. Then they pick the teams. And Kraz has been in red hot form. He scored those 3 tries. And third thing here, Kraz is a bit more expensive as well. Whereas Ruben Garrick is a little bit cheaper than him. So I look at those two and I think, you know what? These guys are probably both in that sort of 50 average area. Kraz is a bit more of a bruiser. He looks a bit better when he plays. Like when you watch him, you see the offloads, you see the tackle breaks. But when you look at Ruben Garrick, he sort of does it a bit more effortlessly. And he has a few more attacking plays in him a lot of the time. That Manly backline in particular, they feed Ruben Garrick. But also he's got the goal kicking. So I think Ruben Garrick is a guy I'd go over Jacob Kraz myself. But I think one of these dual position guys should find their way into your team at some point. And with Manly's bye schedule, he's a great option here.
Yeah, I think the goals and the additional tackles from being at center they'll kind of average out to the same. I think Carraz, he's having a big year, but let's not forget he scrapped to 30 last week, right? Or the week before the 102. That's the thing you get with centers and wingers. Unless your name's Herbie, you're gonna scrap around weeks here and there, and that's why it's pretty hard to get a high average. I think Kiraz is expensive. I think, he is very close to, even if Lomax makes the side or To'o is now fit, he's next in line for that back five. He's playing so well. So I personally, I would prefer, I honestly wouldn't go for Kiraz or Garrick at this point. When there's Lucas and Herbie available for 50, 100K more, that's who I want to go for. But Garrick versus Kiraz, as it stands, yeah, I think Garrick's no chance of origin. Good buy schedule as well. I'd probably go Garrick, but just.
Yeah. I guess I just wanted to highlight the comparison there because Carraz, I think he's getting a bit overhyped now. He had that big game. He scored 100+ points. He dominated the Titans. But you should be looking for the next game against the Titans. So Dylan Lucas, Fletcher Sharp, or not just the Titans, but a next game where a guy's going to exploit something. Carraz, I think he's getting a bit overrated. He's bumped up in price there. Another one I'll shout out here too. I think a lot of people are tearing their teams apart for Scott Drinkwater, and he's been on our list for the last 2 weeks. But on the back of back-to-back pretty good scores, his price has bumped up quite a bit. Doesn't play round 12. You've had a few curveballs thrown to your team. 2 weeks out from round 12, do you want to be rushing in a guy who doesn't play in round 12 and has 2 pretty tough matchups before round 12? It's not really on my agenda, but if people want to do it, they can. So
I got him last week, so I can't say anything.
Last week's fine.
It 68.
He was on the buys last week. But I'm saying he's bumping up in price. We're getting very close to that round 12. So at that point, you sort of got to think about that. And Aaron Clark, last one to talk about here. He's over the last few weeks. He's been on the buy list, on the pod list. He's been on our list for about 4 weeks now. But this is the first week where he's not on the list. And I'm keen to get your thoughts, Biz, on whether you agree or disagree with my theory here. But 2 weeks ago, he was top of the buy list. Number 1 player on our buy list. Priced at a 43. There was infinite value there in a time period where Fisher Harris would be out of the team. Last week, he was priced at a 48. So it was a bit questionable, but it was still a solid buy. This week, he's priced at a 51. Now, he's coming off a game where he played 70 minutes, which is absolutely amazing. But we've got Fisher Harris due back next week. We've got a few, issues at hooker in general that kind of inflates him a bit. But I just sort of think priced at 51, you're sort of paying for what you get at this point. You might average in sort of the mid-50s if you get lucky there and, play that sort of 60 to 65 minutes a game. But there is that potential he does drop back to a slightly lower minute role as well. So, I don't know. I just sort of look at him and I think, their backline is going to get healthy. RTS will come back. Capewell's going to stop playing in the centers. Halasima will go back to the bench, or Nia Corey will go back to the middle forward rotation, or whatever it is there. I think those minutes will start to fade for Aaron Clark a little bit. So I think it's too late now. If you have him, enjoy him. Fantastic buy a couple of weeks ago. If you don't have him, it's too late. Let this one fly through and look for other higher upside options.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. On the flip side, I'll have that with Mamazelis going down. All of a sudden, there's not a really great hooker option,
Yeah.
and Aaron Clark, that dual position in a pretty like mid is hard to fill for round 12 and 15, or at least round 12. And hooker with Mamazelis going down, like he serves a purpose. Like for 51 average, the thing is, he's getting extended minutes because of injuries, but you have to question Warriors are winning and he's playing well.
Yeah.
So he might keep the minutes. So I think, look, if he's getting 60, 70 minutes, he could be a high 50s guy and there's still value in him. But you have to really think carefully, okay, with who, exactly like you said, with who the Warriors are getting back. At this price now, he needs to play 60 minutes a game for the rest of the season. So yeah, make a call based on that. If he's playing 60 minutes for the next 5 weeks, then get him, and if not, then done.
Yep. No, he's a banger. At worst, you probably get what you're paying for anyway. So not a bad option, just not in our top 5. And I'll just quickly mention Selwyn Cobbo here as well, who's been one we talked about a bit the last few weeks. So
this is just you're just gloating now with this. You kept this in.
I just want to highlight that the stats have translated, right?
Yeah.
So cracked out a 55 last week. Look, I got him instead of Karaz, so I'm definitely not gloating at all. I'm pretty sad about it. But 55 last week, had about 230 run meters, 10 tackle breaks. The reserve grade numbers are about 200 meters, 8 tackle breaks. So he's playing that role. And look, he's only got 2 weeks now. So I'm getting asked a lot, should I buy Selwyn Cobbo this week? I sort of look at it and think, you're probably too late at this point. But he still represents some value, but he's probably going to play for Queensland. Provides a bit of fullback cover. You're probably too late. He's going to go back to the wing in round 13, most likely. So unless you think he's going to usurp Reece Walsh for fullback, which I think is highly, highly unlikely to happen, then he's probably not going to be a guy you target at this point. So that's the answer on Cobbo. But if you play head-to-head, if you're a head-to-head player, I think Cobbo's a cracking buy, an awesome buy. But if you're an overall coach, it's probably not the time to do it. Now, pods up next. We've got Jaden Campbell, Cam McInnes, Jamie Humphreys, Britton Nakora, and Jacob Safidi. And it feels like the buyers list from about 8 weeks ago, but here we are talking about these guys again. So for Jaden Campbell and Jamie Humphreys, they've both returned from injury this week, and they're both guys who we all had in our teams previously. And people are thinking about getting back on, because I'll throw to you first here. Jaden Campbell, 780K, doesn't play around 12. What's your thinking in regards to timing? Because we are going to get Jaden Campbell back at some point, but with the 48 break even, but then coming back from a syndesmosis injury, are you thinking it's a case of let's get on now or wait till round 13?
Yeah, the thing with if it was a hamstring, definitely not. But syndesmosis, I feel like, has lower reoccurrence issues. And I think that they need him badly. Like, they're losing, ever since he kind of fell out of the squad, they haven't played too well. Weaver went down last week. I personally, I'm thinking about it. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, having Jaden Campbell as a pod for the next 2 weeks is tempting, but I think the smarter decision is just to let him fade to round 13. Because the realistic situation is, if I bought Jaden Campbell this week, I'm probably not fielding 13 in round 12. Look, I just can't see that work, because there's a bunch of guys that I'd want to keep for round 12 that aren't playing, like Cleary and all the Origin players. Like, I'm not going to trade out Haas, May, Cleary, Yo. So I don't want another guy that's sitting out round 12 as a keeper. So I'm happy to wait and pay 50, 60K more for him in round 13.
Yep, I'm with you there. Other thing is, we've seen some playmakers come back from lower leg injuries and not goal kick. So Matt Burton, Mitch Moses, different injuries, right? But there is the potential that Campbell maybe doesn't goal kick. There's also the potential that Kieran Foran, who's due back really now, could potentially come back into the halves there, play next to Jaden Campbell, with AJ Brimson going to fullback. Keeney's obviously out for the full season. What they're doing now isn't working, so they might go to that. And in that case, Kieran Foran then becomes a 50-50 kicker with Jaden Campbell. Because for fantasy, we love that he kicks, but in real life, it's not a necessity for the Titans that he does all the kicking, right? Like, a split kicking model would actually be better for them in real life. So I think there's some risk to Jaden Campbell's role as well, that you definitely want to wait a couple of weeks and just give this one a bit of time, give him 2 weeks to come back and then jump on. Similar to, what I said about Dylan Lucas. I just sort of felt like, hey, give him a couple of weeks coming back from a hamstring. Let's see how he goes. He's now a buy. He's had 2 weeks back. That risk is basically reduced there. Cam McInnes up next, 713K. Cam McInnes scored a try against Parramatta that, it was a questionable call. Some Para fans are pretty fired up, but you grab that try, grab the big score, 70 plus, 713K. I think he's one that, it's sort of a, you pay for what you get kind of option here with Cam McInnes. I don't know, he doesn't have any dual position there. He just covers the middle forward spot. I'm not as inspired by this one, but I've put him on here because I'm getting asked about him a lot. And he does have that potential to pop off every now and then. But personally, I'm thinking Cam McInnes is probably not the option there. But if you do want a safe option that's just going to come out, make his tackles, get his job done, never really let you down, then Cam McInnes can be a very safe option through the origin period, particularly with Cronulla's bye schedule.
Yeah, not much more to add. I think he's just the same McInnes of the last few years. The only thing is that if Blake Brayley randomly made Origin or something and McInnes played 80 minutes to hooker, like that's the only way I'd really be looking at him. Like he's going to have up and down weeks. Like he's going to play 65 minutes one week, score 70, and then play 45 minutes the next week, and just kind of hovers. So I think with the other options in the middles, I'll skip him. Jamie Humphries is a lot more interesting. I mean, we saw what he could do. The difference now for him is he's more expensive. He could play some time at hooker, which arguably is good for him because he'll make a lot more tackles. But I don't think he's going to kick for 600, 700 kick meters a game anymore because Latrell eats a lot of that. Latrell's got a great boot himself, and Latrell's going to kick for 300, 400 from the back each week. You saw last game he played, he kicked for like 450 from fullback. So I think Humphries is an interesting one. I think the Mamazalis injury means that he will spend some time at hooker with Jai Gray on the bench. If Jai Gray gets on the field, I suspect it's Havili off, Gray into the halves, and Humphries to hooker. Maybe Sullivan to hooker, but I think Humphries is probably more likely. But I think it's a wait and see for me. See how it goes in the new role, and then you can pick him up in round 13 if he's the Jamie Humphries of old. But definitely some good memories with him, so it's tempting.
Some good memories. Yeah, he's a beast, right? Defensive work rate's good too. You could maybe make the counter. This isn't the case I'm making necessarily, but you could make the counter case that Latrell being back improves their attack and there's more attacking stats on offer potentially. I don't really see it that way, but that could help. I mean, 634K, there's just no incentive to go early on this one though. So with Jamie Humphries, he's got a pretty high break even this week. South Sydney have the bye in round 12. They're a red hot option from round 13 onwards. So I could see myself potentially getting Jamie Humphries and Ewan Aitken in round 13. But there's no incentive to me to get those guys before that. But it's worth flagging Jamie Humphries. Worth talking about him here because he pops up and he is undervalued, but there's just no rush to go and get on him at this stage. Then Britton Nakora is another fun one. So he's dropped a bunch of cash this year. He normally floats around that sort of 700K mark. He's down to 575K. Currently priced at a 43. Nakora over the last half decade has averaged between 47 and 52. So we've seen him sort of be that 50 average guy over the last few years. And every year we see him drop down in price, get a bit cheaper, become interesting, and then be someone to target. Now, I've sort of forced a few guys into this video this week, like Cam McInnes, Nakora, these types of players, because I know what positions we need, right? So I'm not really talking about centers as much, not really talking about halves as much, because we're covered for round 12, but everyone's asking the question, what edge back rower should I get right now? Nakora is one of the answers that you could look at there. And basically the bet you're making here with Nakora is that the Sharks sort of start to light it up. Nico starts to light it up, and these guys start feeding Nakora a bunch of good quality ball. And not just the tries being scored, but more of those attacking runs, those offloads and that kind of thing as well. So that's what you're betting on with Nakora. More meters run, more offloads, more tackle breaks. And I guess it's a question of, do you have faith in Cronulla? Now, I haven't seen enough from Cronulla to make a second bet myself because I've already got Nico Hines in the Cronulla side and jump on Nakora too. But he's one to keep an eye on for round 12. And with the 55 break even this week up against Manly, you don't have to rush it right now. But he is up against Ben Trebojevic, which is a matchup that is much better than Olakau'atu. So could be one where he does break out. And at some point, he'll be a really interesting option we do look at. So Nakora is pretty interesting there. And then unless you want to talk about Nakora beers, I'll throw to you Jacob Safidi at 404K, down about 130K so far this year.
Yeah, last thing I'll add on Nakora is I think last year he got to 550 and then he just blew up. It was either last year or the year before. And he kind of does this. Yeah, it was last year. He kind of got to 500. And we talked about him and like three others at this point. And Nakora just went on an absolute tear of 60s and 70s. And he became a beast. So could happen. The thing with the Sharks is they're a good attacking side that aren't impacted by Origin. Like there's got barely any Origin players in their side. So I can't even think of any off the top of my head right now. So they could do pretty well over the next few weeks. But otherwise, Jacob Saifidi, look, honestly, I thought we were supposed to keep this one quiet, but we can't keep anyone quiet at the Casual Athlete. We're for the people.
Pod list. The pod list. People
yeah,
listening at this point, they deserve
yeah,
it.
if you've been listening for 27 odd minutes, it's worth it. But look, Jacob Saifidi, priced at 400k, priced at 30. He's been playing 50 minutes when healthy this year, and traditionally he's like a low 40 scorer. Plays around 12, plays around 15. Cheapy guy that I will definitely have. Like I generally think he's honestly close to a must-have. At 400k, getting 40 points in those two lies, like rather than stuff someone in your team that isn't a season-long keeper, like I'd rather have Jacob Saifidi pump me out of 40 and be like my 19th, 20th man, rather than stuff a mid in like a Max King for 650, 700k that I'm going to use for the buys and throw away after. Saifidi, like you could have him and then have him as a depth option for most of the year, right? So, he even at this price, he's going to make you 100, 150k. So, and he's got a big score in him. So, Jacob Saifidi still got a decent break even this week, but he's in my team. If not this week, next week, because he's going to be super handy over the next 5-6 weeks.
Yeah, the one thing I'll shout out is, again, we talk about that Titans matchup. Yeah, it could be a try on offer for Jacob Saifidi in that one. He has had a few attacking stat breakouts every now and then as well. The price drop too, it's just due to early injuries in games. So maybe that is one thing to keep in mind. He is back from that calf injury, but he looked just fine last week. He looked absolutely fine. So yeah, Jacob Saifidi, red hot option. The other thing is with him at 400k, he kind of allows you to hold, because you're talking about holding Payne Haas, Terrell May, Isaiah Yeo. You're not dumping all this extra cash into middle forward where you have to start all these guys. So with Jacob Saifidi at 400k, if he doesn't make you 17 every week, that's not a disaster because you're paying 400k for him. And it allows you to keep those guys. And outside of Origin, play those guys. Whereas during those Origin weeks, you can play Saifidi. The other thing I'll factor in here as well is on your point about keeping those three big players, Payne Haas, Terrell May, Isaiah Yeo, all their teams are battling right now. So the best one is the Broncos, who are 5-4 at this stage. But the other two have losing records, I believe, as it stands. So they're not going to be resting guys at bulk through the Origin period. They're going to be running these guys and trying to get wins. So I think it's a great strategy to run someone like Saifidi and one of these other options we're going to talk about next as well, with those big guns too. And that other option, by the way, he's second on this list, Jazz Tavanga. But we've got a cheapies list now to go into. It's a pretty fun cheapies list. There's a few interesting things to talk about here. But firstly, Laken King Tongia, he had a cracking debut game. 260k right now. He was at 230k before. Pumped out of 47. Had a nearly 100 meters run. And just, I've said this a few times, but just looked solid to me. Like every time he ran the ball, Biz, we're para fans. We've seen Dylan Brown over the years. It looked a bit like the way Dylan Brown goes into contact when he's running the ball. Like he just sort of looked like he held himself, didn't get really knocked off balance like as much as you'd expect from a young half. And I think that's going to translate to tackle breaks in future weeks and potentially sort of running plays in future weeks. In this game, though, we saw a couple of try assists instead. And yeah, good defensive work rate here too. So I just think he's a really solid option. I think he looked good for St. George. If Jaden Sewer put that ball down, they win that game. Like it just felt like he was going to be, he looked just as good as they were expecting, and he's going to hold that spot. So I personally think LKT is a guy that you probably want to buy this week. You don't have to rush and get him this week if you don't want to, but 260k, in that role, looked like pretty solid base stats. Looks like a guy who's going to average about 40 points. It's hard to say no to something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I only found out yesterday that it wasn't his debut actually long. He played a couple of games at the end of last year. So for some reason he was hyped up all week, and it was like a 19-year-old making his debut, and I somehow found out that he had played games. But you're exactly right. His reserve grade stats are exactly like you mentioned, low 40s average, but with barely any kick meters. He's not a noted kicker. He kicked for 50 to 100 meters per game in reserves and averaged low 40s. So I think you'll get that from him. The Dragons are a very fantasy-friendly side. And a couple of my Dragons mates were telling me this. I was kind of asking them, Dragons are not playing that well. They're not a top 4 side or anything, but all their players pump out big scores in low minutes. Like we've seen Dylan Egan, we've seen Hamish Stewart, we've seen Toby Couchman. And the things they mention is that the Dragons just keep the ball in play and they play fundamentals footy. So there's a lot of time with the ball in play. And like, I know King Togi is probably relying more on attacking stats, but more ball in play means more time for attacking stats. And they generally play from behind quite a bit as well. So that's usually good for halves who want to, break some tackles, make some offloads. So he doesn't play round 12, which is tricky, but he could also be 350k by round 13 if you're not careful. So assess if you can fit him in for round 12. I'm 50-50 at this stage. I think this year with so much cash being made that I'm happy to skip out on 100k if it fits my team, but I also would love to have a fun guy like him in my squad. So I think that's an easy one. But personally, I would rather go for Jazz Tavanga, who's next on our list. 366k. He's been playing big minutes this year at hooker, and he doesn't score that well at hooker because I think what Jazz really relies on is attacking stats, running the ball. He's a good runner of the ball. He's nuggety. He's low to the ground. He breaks tackles. He offloads. I think if he's getting 50, 60 minutes at lock, he's scoring 45 plus points at 366k, plays round 12, plays round 15 too, I'm pretty sure. Look, if I think
and round 18.
And round 18, yeah, exactly. So if Gerbo, I think, is staying at prop, and look, I think the days of 80-minute Gerbo are done. I just don't think he offers enough punch. I think he's better suited for 40, 50 minutes. And Jazz is not young either. So it's not like we're replacing an old bloke with a young bloke. It's two old blokes. But Jazz is a bit more spring at this stage of his career. I just think that there's less miles on his legs. Like he's never been a big minute guy. But we've seen when he plays 45, 50 minutes how good he can be. So just like I said with Jacob Saifidi, he's a guy, especially with that dual position, that I'm happy to plug in at the end of my bench most weeks and play him in round 12, 15, 18. So he is going to be one of the first into my side this week. I'll look at the Manly squad in a bit more detail and think, okay, is he going to keep this starting lock role? But if I think so, he's in my team.
I'll throw some details at you too. So Jazz, when he plays 50 plus minutes across his career with an enormous sample size, by the way, he averages 58 points in 61 minutes. That's absurd. So basically, in terms of scoring profile, you're looking at Aaron Clark here without the form or the job security at half the price. That's pretty much what Jazz Tavanga is. He's basically just Aaron Clark, but without the runs on the board there. So I think he's a cracking option for this week. I think he's a red hot option. The risk here is real though. So you've got, obviously you mentioned Gerbo there, but Josh Aloiai and Tafoa Sipley are both guys who will return pretty soon. So one's due back, I believe, next week. The other one round 13. So that could throw some curveballs in, but I just don't think the other options have been playing well enough to justify, Jazz Tavanga being moved if he does play well in this role. So it could be big for him. I just reckon he's a great option here, though. Like if you're in the market for a hooker for round 12. I mean, Jazz Tavanga, you could do a lot worse at 360.
He's so cheap. Even if it doesn't work out, it's really the end of the world. Not really. So
yeah, I might have Jazz and also Jacob Saifidi.
I might have both. Yeah, at this stage, I'll have both.
Yeah, mate, that's our middle forwards there. And then I've got Fanua Blake, who had 0 tackle breaks, 0 offloads against Para last week, but Para couldn't win. Yeah, it was brutal. But Jazz Tavanga, he's a good option. I think these two are the options, by the way, to target. Now, there's a lot of questions going around about, Tavanga versus Riley Smith. Like, which way do you go? I think Tavanga is the upside scoring pedigree sort of play. Riley Smith is the job security and safer play. So you've kind of got to make your own call. Like, you look at your team and you sort of think about it and you go, hey, I want to shoot for the stars here with Jazz Tavanga, or I want a safe option I don't have to think about. That's going to be Riley Smith, because Riley is clearly the Parramatta hooker going forward. He's clearly the guy. He's getting close to 80 minutes. So it's 80, then 72 in the last 2 weeks. He bumped out 57 tackles last week. Had a few extra stats there as well, but the 57 tackles is red hot. He's missing a few tackles, but I don't think they're really ones that are contributing to too many negative defensive plays. So I'm not super worried about that. I just reckon he's the guy at Parramatta, and at 390k at hooker, in a hooker spot that really is dying. If he can pump out that sort of low 40s average, he's going to do a job for you. And you don't have to pay, 400k more for Wade Egan, for example, who might outscore him by 10 to 15 points. So I just think going cheap at hooker with Tavanga, Riley Smith, or if you had Aaron Clark a few weeks ago, is the play this year.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing with Riley Smith, the only knock before we go to the next guy, is that Brendan Hand's coming back from injury. I think Hands has proven he's not the guy, but he could eat 20, 30 minutes from Riley Smith. So he could go from a 65 to 80-minute guy to 50, 55. But we saw at the start of the year when Hands was starting with Riley on the bench, Riley was coming off the bench to play 55 minutes anyway. So I think that at worst, he's going to be priced up. A worst case scenario, like you'll get what you pay for. So I think he's a pretty good option. Charlie Geimer, though, I will say that he is not the best fantasy scorer. He doesn't have a lot of attacking upside in him. Not a very secure position. Like Eels have a lot of edges. They've got Kelmer, who is suspended, who might come back. They've got Lane, who was there, but then got dropped. They've got Madison, who's just not making the side this year, so I wouldn't worry too much about him. Riles clear doesn't like him.
Can I mention a guy as well? Jordan Samrani. So they've transitioned him from center to edge back row, and he's on the bench this week. So the plan is definitely for him to play some edge back row. Guymer's the guy that's going to get rest for sure. It won't be Kautonga. So I agree with you completely. He's not getting 80 minutes. No chance of that.
Yeah, and then I think Sam Riney was pretty good in his 20 minutes off the bench last week at second row. He looked promising. So they could that role could grow. Like Guymer hasn't played that well, to be honest. He had a great first debut game last year and hasn't done anything since. Does he really deserve that spot at the edge? I don't know. Like I don't really know what's going on with the coaching staff and guys like Madison and Cartwright, etc. But it's not like Guymer's really setting the world on fire. But he's younger. They want to give him opportunities this year. But I wouldn't be touching Guymer. I just don't think he has a scoring profile to match the risk, even at that price. Like I know he's going to pretty friendly for buyers and things like that, but like it's a pass from me. And if you don't have anything to add there, then Luron Patea, like look, had a beastly try last week, amazing, but doesn't get minutes. Like even last week played 15 minutes,
28 minutes.
Yeah, 28 minutes. The argument there is that he'll get more minutes as the buyers, like the Origin players, get rested. Maybe he gets more minutes off the back of that performance. But they're barely giving guys like Isaiah Papali'i minutes. So they're pretty log jammed at the forwards. They've got guys who can play big minutes there, like Liam Henry, and there's guys sniffing around. So I wouldn't be touching Patea, even though he looks tempting after last week.
The only thing I'll say here with Patea, and I'm with you, that there's a reason Guymer and Patea are at the bottom of this list. Like they're not going to be there. But with Patea, the Panthers team list is bizarre, right? So they've gone Garner at center there, and their bench here is Brad Schneider in the 14 jersey, who's a utility, Thomas Jenkins in the 17 jersey, who's an outside back, and then Liam Henry and Luron Patea, right? So you've basically got no cover in the forwards outside of those two. So the theory there is that he might even get more minutes than last week if that team stays as it is. But then I look at this and I sort of go, and we'll talk about Jenkins, by the way, in the holds or sells, no spoilers yet. I think they changed this up. Like, I think Jenkins does move into that center spot. I think Luke Garner goes to the edge back row spot. I think Isaiah Papali'i returns to the middle forward rotation. And then their bench would be Brad Schneider, Liam Henry, Isaiah Papali'i, and Luron Patea, which looks a lot more normal for what I'd expect from the Panthers. So I think there's a lot of risk in that. But if the team list stayed as is, I wouldn't be shocked at all if Patea scored well. The other thing to factor in is they're going to lose Isaiah Yeo and Liam Martin to Origin in a couple of weeks' time as well. So that could be a little boost to Patea's scoring there too. But the Origin schedule for the Panthers just isn't good enough to justify it. But he is worth flagging here as someone who, he will pop up in score and price. But this year we're so spoiled, we don't need to go for a guy like him.
Yeah, and he has the bye next week as well, so it's kind of like iffy. So I think he's an easy skip this week, but he's an interesting option. Like you never know. Like I've seen worse logic buys pop off. So let's see.
Yeah, we've got to talk about 5, right? That's why we put the 5. It's always interesting to talk about the real outsiders.
He was the most bought as of yesterday, or second most bought, or something. Like percentage wise, I think it was just people. I think it was just like before the trades really happened, like really early after lockout. And some people were just I don't know what was on there. He was like second on the list anyway.
All right. Well, if any of you are doing that, I think I might have to ban you. Like, all right, holds here. So some pretty common sense ones, and then one I want to talk about at the end. But Kalen Ponga, Nafahu White, Sua Wong, Jackson Purdue, and Tom Jenkins. These are all guys who I'm getting a lot of screenshots of trades that are selling them. So I think we should talk about them here. Kalen Ponga is the first one, and I'll be real. This is a bit more of a victory lap than anything else. So last week we really pumped it up. Knights going to turn up, pump South. Ponga's going to pump out 50 plus. He scored 64 in that game, and he really turned his scoring around. He's got the Titans and the Eels in the next 2 weeks as well, and then potentially Origin or potentially playing round 12. So, yeah, Ponga is, if you're a head-to-head coach at 536K, I'd be buying him 100%. But as an overall coach, it's a hard one to squeeze into your team, but it's tempting. It's really tempting.
It's honestly, I'm not going to lie.
Mm.
I'm definitely considering it for those two matchups.
Yeah.
And rumors that they're going to play Munster at fullback with Dearden and Cherry in the halves. Like,
Yeah.
it's just enough of a carrot at
Tempting, right?
536K with Titans and Eels, where he could go 70 plus in both. That it's almost, even if he doesn't play around 12, like it could be worth it for just those two scores and this price alone. And lower break even now, he could even make you 100K before then. So I don't know if I could hold. I'll have to look at my team squad. If I can somehow field 12 or 13, even if Ponga makes Origin, I might do it. I think it could be a mad pot over the next 2 weeks.
Man, I'm looking at it as well. It's tough though. It's tough because like with this rib issue and everything that's going on there, if he does make Origin, he's a big risk to not back up.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's the concern
true.
I've got. But
and
then
they've
the
got
Knights are
Sharp
fighting
who
for
can
their
play
season.
fullback. Yeah, that's true. They're not winning, so
they're battling, right? So yeah, he's very interesting. And in that game last week, he didn't look over, his issues. It's just that the Knights had a win basically, and the middle forwards are back, and everyone else is there playing well. I think that'll be enough for him to go well. But then the risk here is that they just go so well that he kind of doesn't have to do that much, and Fletcher Sharp runs all his support lines for him, and everyone else is running the ball, and he sort of just gets to facilitate, which he's been doing a bit. So it is a risk, but yeah, he's an interesting one. But if you do have him in your team, obviously still hold on to him. He's a rock solid option. If it benefited me more that he was cheap this week, like if we didn't have so many 700K players get hurt this week, I'd be looking at him. But it's a tough one. Then the Fahu White, 612K. Bit of talk about selling him from a few people. I just want to hammer this one. Do not sell Fahu White. He is a red hot option through the Origin period. Covers that middle forward spot, has dual position, and he's scoring well enough. He's back to that 50-minute role, which is what we expected. But he's at 612K, so he's not absurdly expensive. And you've got this Origin period now where, Lindsay Collins is still out. Spencer Lenu will make the Origin team 100%. Angus Crichton will probably make that team as well. Connor Watson, he's a chance at making that team. So their forward pack is going to be relatively depleted. And we're going to see Nafahu White step up and play those big minutes again, as we did last year when, Terrell May stepped in as well. And, the Roosters do lose a bunch of guys. And with that buy schedule for Nafahu White, he's the perfect middle to carry through. So he's not quite a buy, but he's definitely a hold if you have him.
Yeah, I think him and Wong are the exact same category. Like, just suffer this week, and then Wong again. He's been one of the buys of the year. He is a great scorer at the edge back row position. Just suffer this week. He'll be great over the buy periods, and he's not as good as White in terms of he doesn't cover that mid position, which is a lot trickier. But again, he's one of the better edges that you can have. He's a 50+ edge that's available for those rounds. And there's not, like, for example, if you trade him to a Nakora, you're only making 50K for a more specky scorer. So, like, what's really the point? Same with, like, if you cash him out to a Halasima, etc. Like, who knows with Halasima? So I would definitely be keeping Wong. I know that he has been a bit slower over the last few weeks, but he's also a guy that we've seen that can crack out an 80, 85. So I would hold on to him for sure.
He's playing bulk minutes too. So, yeah, super easy. Jackson Purdue, 545K. This is an interesting one. So he's at the bottom of the holds list because if you've got a trade that you can make and it makes your team perfect, right? And you don't have Preston, you don't have Horsburgh, that kind of thing, and getting rid of Purdue works for you, I'm not completely against it. I'm definitely not completely against it. He's 545K. He's pretty expensive now. You can make that move. I just personally think for most teams, you got bigger problems than Purdue right now. And he's a guy who has a buy in round 12, but then just runs through the Origin period, basically. So I just like the idea of keeping him. I think in dry weather games, he's fantastic. It was pouring down rain in that game where he scored 27 or 30 or whatever he scored on the weekend. But I think he's one who has been an electric form. And I wouldn't let one low score steer you off him this early. So for me, he's a pretty clean hold.
Yeah, Cowboys are red hot as well right now. So like attacking wise. I know they didn't win, but still scored 30 odd points. If Talangi didn't fluff it in the corner, he could have, they could have won that game.
Yeah.
I think he's a whole. The only I am considering moving him to Herbie, but that's like the only real option I'd consider, because obviously Rob Toya's on bye this week, so if you've got Lucas and Purdue as your centers, it makes sense. But if you can do Lucas and Herbie, it could be even more sense. So
Yeah, and I've said yes
one I'm
to a few of
thinking.
those, by the way. Like where they've
Yeah,
said, I can go Purdue to Lucas or Purdue to Herbie,
yeah,
whatever you said. Yeah, for sure. You can do that. You can do that. He's just not one to desperately sell. Like,
no,
I think what we're seeing a lot of this year is people are going, oh, no, that player scored low. I better rush them out of my team because we're
yeah,
not being faced with enough real problems in our teams.
yeah,
We are this week, but in general. So,
yeah,
Purdue has bulk Rob Toya potential. He's got bulk Tamale potential. He's got massive Dylan Egan potential where everyone panicked and they just rushed these guys out of their teams. And, no diss if he did, but these guys, have shown glimpses of massive upside, and you just want to stick with them for a bit longer. Tommy
Speaking
Jenkins
of
is the
Tom
last one.
Jenkins, exactly that category. 70
Yeah.
after he was nutting it out.
Yeah. Well, he was. We had this big debate. I don't know if you watched the show last week, but I had Jay-Z on, and we had a big argument about Tom Jenkins, and we kind of were both right in a way. I was coming on here ready to gloat, because I was very firmly on the hold Tom Jenkins. He's had 6 games so far, averaged 32 points with no tries. He's priced in, the mid-20s there. The value's there. He plays around 12, all that sort of jazz. He's now on the bench, and it's a strange team setup because they've got Luke Garner sitting in the starting side. They don't have anyone out injured in the back line. So if they're playing Garner at the starting center spot, it's kind of a choice that they're making that at full strength, Garner will be their starting center. I refuse to believe that that's their plan, to then have Garner as their starting center and Jenkins and Schneider on the bench, again, at full strength, other than Scott Sorensen, of course. Like, it just feels bizarre to me. But Ivan Cleary has made some strange choices this week. So maybe there's a bit of bias in me speaking. But I just think Tom Jenkins is a better center than Luke Garner. And I think Luke Garner is more effective for them in the forward rotation right now. So I personally think there's going to be a change on game day. And for that reason, I think if you're going to trade Jenkins, trade him to someone who plays after him, who is more expensive than him, so that you can reverse that trade. But if you can keep him, try to keep him. Like, he's going to play round 12. Brian Toll is going to be playing Origin for sure. I think he's a guy you want to try to hold just in case he does move to that center spot. And then he'll rise in cash a bunch because he rose about 40K last week. So I just think he's one to try and hold. But at the same time, if selling him does make your team better and you can do something similar to Jackson Purdue, I'm okay with it. But he's just not someone to rush quickly out of your team at this stage.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely holding him. It's only 1 week of pain, right? Because next week they've got the bye anyway. The only problem with holding him is that I assume that anyone with him is probably going to play him this week because of 3 or 4 roosters out. So, like, for example, if I keep him this week, he's probably going to be in my 17.
Oh,
And
gross.
there's like a massive dud potential, right? Like he
Yeah.
could score 5 points. Like if he barely,
Yep.
maybe a 0 if he barely got off the bench.
Mm.
I'm hoping that that's not the case. I think if I trade a guy like Fafita out, like hopefully I can have him as my 18th man. But that's my only caveat. Otherwise, I think 100% he's a hold. You definitely want him in round 12 for when Brian To'o is at Origin. I think it'll be a very big surprise if they don't play To'o, especially if he gets 2 games before the Origin reveals. So
No, they'll play him for sure.
yeah, they'll play him. Yeah,
There's no
it'll
way
be
in
very
hell.
surprising. But like that low break even coming up to 70, and I think without Casey McLean hogging the ball inside him, big difference maker for him. Like he can score a lot more tries. And Panthers are slowly building their attack. They're getting better. They're like slowly building into it. A couple of wins in the last few weeks. So yeah, hold for me.
Yeah, he's like a 40+ average without McLean. So yeah, the upside is definitely there. And wing fullback sucks as well. So yeah, just try and keep your depth there. Then in the sell section, we'll blast through these guys because they're pretty straightforward. Jacob Preston lost his battle at the judiciary. So I just want to explain this one briefly, just in case anyone doesn't fully understand how the judiciary works. So he got charged with a crusher tackle. He's got a lot of loading and a bit of history. So it meant that grade 1 charge was pretty harsh. Ended up being a 3-game ban. Now, the Dogs looked at this and they thought, all right, grade 1, we can't downgrade this because grade 1's the lowest grade you can have. So we're either going to accept 3 weeks or we're going to go to judiciary and try to eliminate it completely. So their argument, judiciary, was that it basically wasn't a crusher tackle worthy of a suspension at all, right? So they were fighting for 0 weeks. They lost that one. They got the slight upgrade to 4 weeks. I think the Dogs knew going in there that they were very unlikely to backflip on that one, but the 3 to 4 weeks to them made sense because right now they're missing Josh Curran and Satili Tupanua, and those guys will be back for that extra week where he's out. So they're going to have cover for him in that extra week, whereas this next couple of weeks, they're really on struggle street in the edge back row spot. So I think that's what was happening with the Dogs. You know, they took a shot. They knew it was like a 20% chance, and it didn't come off there. But he's out 4 weeks. He'll miss round 10, round 11, round 12. They have a bye in round 13, and then he'll miss round 14. He'll be back for round 15. So it's 5 weeks on the sideline, really. I love Jacob Preston. Like if it was a 2-week suspension, I'd keep him for sure. But 5 weeks is too long. I think you got to move him on. And the crazy thing is, we're probably going to buy him back in round 15 when he comes back. Because he's just been so red hot for fantasy this year.
We did hype him up all preseason as potentially the best edge this year, and he's proven that it could be on. Easy sell. Corey Horsburgh. I mean, by the way, I love the Judiciary Primer 101 from the casual athlete himself.
Yeah.
Corey Horsburgh. I mean, I'll let you talk about him because I'm not as likely to sell him. I think that if he plays this week, the concussion thing all doing the rounds is that grade 1 concussion and having a beer in the sheds right after is ridiculous. So he's named, they're fighting. I don't know what the results are. I just woke up in New York, so I don't know if you have more news than me. But if he's playing this week, I'm keeping him this week. But you tell me. I haven't got the latest updates on Corey because it's pretty early here.
I know he's battling it. So I've got the Preston news. I haven't actually got the Horsburgh news yet. Let's have a look here. Come on, give me something, guys. I don't think there's an outcome yet.
Yeah. Okay. So this one's kind of probably less definitive until the week pans. But okay, let's just discuss this one anyway. So if he doesn't play,
quickly, sorry, on Horse, I'll put it in the comments of this. It'll be the pinned comment. Yeah. So if you guys come here, it'll be in the pinned comment of the YouTube video, or it'll be on Instagram. You know, there's heaps of spots. But go on, Biz.
I was going to say, do you think he plays Origin?
So I actually reckon the HIA knocks his chances down a bit. I think he was like a 90% chance. I think it knocks him down to like an 80% chance. Part of me wants to hold him just in case he doesn't make Origin. You know, missing this game. I feel like Laurie Daly and Billy Slater are both a bit crazy with their selections and could be persuaded by that final game quite a bit. And Horsburgh missing it definitely hurts him. So, yeah, I'm tempted to hold. If I can find a way to hold him, and, you know, I target a few of these guys like Jacob Safidi, you know, Jazz Tavanga, that sort of thing. I don't need the cash. I'll have a look at it because I don't have too many Roosters. I've just got Rob Toyer and Hugo Savala. So I can kind of afford to hold one of these guys, and Horsburgh is looking like one that I might consider holding. The issue is that he's sort of capped out in price. So like he's basically priced at what he's worth. Canberra don't lose many guys to Origin. You know, you're not missing out on that much if you do sell him.
Yeah, and if he plays this week, I assume he's a firm hold.
Oh, yeah. No, he's a firm hold if he plays this week, 100%. You keep him in.
Yeah.
Then I'll shout out Mama Zealous as well. So he's going for further scans at the moment to check out that dislocated elbow, I believe it was. It's a pretty brutal one, and it's sad for our fantasy side because, in the words of Star Wars, you know, Obi-Wan, you were the chosen one. You were meant to save us, Peter Mama Zealous. I lost the quote there, but, you know, he was meant to be the guy at hooker, and he was looking like a beast. Like he was pumping out that 50s average. South Sydney have the best bye schedule as well. After round 12, they just absolutely pump. So I look at him and just think, oh, man, that sucks. Like him and Riley Smith would have been perfect because he could have been my real starting hooker. Riley Smith covered round 12. He's out for 4 to 6 weeks is the initial prognosis, but there will be a more concrete answer that comes out soon. If he's only out for like 2 weeks or something, he's a hold in my view. But 4 to 6 weeks, again, it just becomes too long. Like it's too long to hang on to a guy, especially with a guy when the guy doesn't have great job security when he comes back. Because if Jamie Humphries kills it at hooker, you know, in that role or whatever it is there, they might bring him back slowly and he might play 50 minutes a game. And, you know, it's just a bit too messy for me. So I think he's a pretty easy sell here.
Yeah, easy sell if it's 4 to 6 weeks. Sam Tuivasa, that's it. With the next guy here, surprising drop for me. I thought he was actually
sorry. I'll update you because you've just woken up. 8 to 10 weeks. Ankle syndesmosis injury. I only found out today. Yeah.
Oh, right. I didn't know that. Like, I didn't see that in the quick team list runs I did before this show. So, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
That's
no,
an easy
he's
sell.
gone for a while.
I don't think you need to say much about that. 8 to
Yeah,
10 weeks, sell. See you later, mate.
that's a brutal one. But there's a lot of cheap options right now, so you're in a good position. And then Stafford Toa, he hasn't been named this week. He had that neck twinge that pulled him out last week. I just think like he's not playing round 12. He's not a season keeper. You know, it's a multi-week injury now. I'd rather keep guys like Purdue or Jenkins who have a bit of upside for round 12, or Jenkins that does, as opposed to like a Stafford Toa 517K, who's kind of run his race a bit here.
Yeah, I think Stafford Toa is an interesting one. Like he's been performing better than most people expected. I missed him. It's kind of like Purdue in terms of hot run of form, but he's in. I think at 570K. Like same with Purdue at 545. Like when you see these guys, what's really their potential? Like can they be 700K players? Like highly unlikely. So if they're capped at 600 and they've only got a bit of juice to go, and there's more juice somewhere else, like move them and make more money. Like I just think that they're pretty much at their peak, and one low score will kill all their money making completely. Like Purdue, like how much money has he got like left in him after that lower score? Not that much, and he's not a keeper, so it could be prime to move some of these guys. But on the flip side, just like you said, these are the types of guys you sell too early and come out with an 80 plus and make you look silly. So now that I've said that, Stafford Toa and Purdue will come out with 80 plus games.
Yeah,
So
I mean they're on that edge of bench kind of guy, right? Like Toa's obviously got the injury now, but like a Purdue, Toya, I love them in that loophole spot. You know, you chuck them in that loophole spot, and maybe they pop off, maybe they don't. But yeah, it could be fun. That is buy, hold, sell, done and dusted, and the lights have turned off for me here. So yeah, buy, hold, sell. We
perfect.
are done and dusted.